Being on the court was just like a safe place away from stress of school and away from anything else. And it was just something that I loved doing. I just had so much fun playing basketball. One morning, just after one of my practices, I couldn't physically get up out of bed. And we went to my family doctor, and that's when we did the first blood test, which noticed that the white blood cells were really low. I was told that, there was nothing they could do for me for now, no treatment or anything, but I just needed to kind of wait it out and it would get better on its own. Ultimately, after 6 months, my condition got even significantly worse, and I had my first bone marrow biopsy. We found out that some of my cells turned into what's called myelodysplastic syndrome, so it's a pre-leukemia. After I found out that I had myelodysplastic syndrome and that I was going to need a bone marrow match, my whole family got tested, and then we found out that neither my parents nor my sister were a match, so I needed someone from the worldwide bone marrow registry. We had just learned that only 50% of Canadians were able to find a match for their transplant last year. About 3 months after I was diagnosed and the search began for a donor for me, we found out that I actually had a donor lined up who was potentially going to be my perfect match. Once we finally got a date, we were at one of my team's basketball games, and the principal just stopped the game, and in between the third and the fourth quarter, he was able to find a mic in the back room, hook it up to the system, and then brought me out to the center court and just announced to everyone that I had found a donor and that I was going to be heading to Sick Kids on Sunday. Leading up to the transplant, I had 8 days of chemotherapy. So from what I understand, it's about 8 months worth in the 8 days, because they're trying to completely wipe out your system so that you have room for the new cells. One of my last memories is them hanging up the first chemo bag, because when you get the chemotherapy, it literally takes over your whole body. You feel absolutely awful. When I got my transplant is when I went into isolation. So I was told I might be in isolation for up to 2 months or 6 months. It is one of the hardest things emotionally that I had to go through, being in isolation. You are in so much pain and so sick that you can hardly see the light at the end of the tunnel at that point. And the first day when I was able to get out of isolation, little things make such a big difference in that, and just to step out of that door was huge for me at that time. That gave me a lot of hope. After 28 days post-transplant, I was finally able to come home from the hospital. One of the biggest things that allowed me to come home was the care at KGH. So I was really lucky to have Dr. Silva here, who works really closely with the transplant team, and she's actually involved in a lot of the research that they do. It was really interesting when Dr. Good pulled out the slides from my actual bone marrow biopsies and was able to show me the cells that they tested when I had first been diagnosed. So that was really, really cool. And just to see how they could tell which cells had mutated and were the cancer cells in the body, just to distinguish them between the healthy cells and the cancer cells, and how they made that diagnosis. It was really, really neat to see the detail that goes into it, because you would just think, oh, they know it's a cancer cell, or it's not, but it really goes down to that tiny little genetic test that you can't see on a microscope. You need to do specific growth and manipulation of the cell to see those little genes. I knew that obviously all the blood work and all the bone marrow biopsies that I had been sent there, so it definitely kind of hit home for me. So it's really neat to see the changes that are going to be coming, and it's really going to help them to speed up their tests and stuff. And when I was able to get back onto the court, that was the sense of knowing that things are actually getting back to normal. Like when you're getting the blood tests and stuff, like you can see that it's getting back to normal, but until you get back to your normal activities and normal life, you don't really feel back to your normal self. Now I'm 2 years post-transplant, and it's absolutely amazing, because when we had sat down with the doctors on those first visits and found out, all the things that could go wrong, and now I look back and know that, my perfect match and my treatment and everything that I went through, I am on the other side of it doing so well, and I'm so grateful.